When a disaster hits, our minds immediately go to food, water, shelter, rescue teams, right? But what if the most important thing we need to save is our humanity? Today, we're diving into a really powerful article from thekalpa.org, written by its editor, Sampath Samarakun, that completely reframes this and argues that every single disaster is, at its core, a human rights crisis.
So here's the game plan for our explainer. First, we're going to challenge the way we even define disaster response. Then, we'll get into the messy reality of how aid can become a political weapon. After that, we'll explore a whole new model, one built on dignity and justice. Then, we're going to zoom out and look at the global power plays involved. And finally, we'll see why this isn't just about a new policy, but about a massive political transformation.
All right, let's jump right in with the main argument. The way we've traditionally looked at disaster management is just way too small. It's not just about stuff, about property, it's about protecting people's fundamental rights.
I mean, think about it. Is a government's job just to handle the search and rescue? Hand out some food and water? The article argues that their obligation goes so much deeper. It's an obligation that doesn't just disappear in a crisis. In fact, that's when it's tested the most.
And this is the big shift in thinking. A human rights-based approach says that responding to a disaster isn't just some technical checklist. No, it's a core duty of the state. It means you're actively protecting people's right to life, to health, to housing. These are all principles already laid out in big global agreements, like the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction.
Okay, so that's the ideal. But as you can imagine, that ideal often smacks right into a much harsher, much more complicated political reality. Let's talk about that gap between what we want to happen and what really happens.
You know, this should be the simplest thing in the world. When people are in trouble, help should go to the people who need it the most. It doesn't matter who they are, where they live, or what they believe. It's just a basic moral principle.
But the reality, as the article points out so clearly, can be absolutely brutal. Instead of being a lifeline, aid gets turned into a weapon. It gets funneled to political friends or held back from enemies. And suddenly you have this huge, dangerous gap between the ideal we all believe in and what's actually happening on the ground.
And this isn't just a theory, right? We've seen it happen. During the huge earthquakes in 2023, the Turkish government was accused of deliberately slowing down relief to areas where there were a lot of Syrian refugees, maybe to stir up nationalist feelings. And if you look back at Haiti after the 2010 earthquake, a lot of the international aid was criticized for serving the political agendas of the donor countries, not the actual needs of Haitians. Some even called it a form of neocolonialism.
So that's the problem. It's a big one. But what's the solution? Well, the article doesn't just point out the flaws. It proposes a new framework, one that's built on three really important pillars: dignity, justice, and participation.
This new way of thinking is based on three really powerful ideas. First, human dignity. You treat survivors like human beings, with respect, not just as numbers on a spreadsheet. Second, justice and equity. You have to actively put the most vulnerable people first, because we know disasters always hit them the hardest. And third, participation. This one's huge. You bring survivors to the table and make them partners in their own recovery. They're not just passive victims waiting for a handout.
And this quote just nails it. It reframes the whole conversation. Aid is no longer a charitable gift from a kind government. It's a right. It's something citizens are owed, a fundamental part of the deal between a state and its people.
Now, this whole framework doesn't just stop at a country's borders. As the article argues, it has massive, and I mean massive, implications for how countries deal with each other on the world stage.
Just think about it for a second. If a government's number one job in a crisis is to protect human rights, then it can't just do whatever it wants anymore. It has to be transparent. It has to be held accountable by its own people. This completely challenges the idea that a government can control all the information and shut down any criticism, even when they say it's for an emergency. And the article points to recent examples where governments have been accused of doing the exact opposite, using a crisis to grab more power. I mean, during the COVID-19 pandemic, both China and Russia were accused of hiding important information and cracking down on human rights, all while saying they were just protecting public health. A human rights approach would be a direct offense against that kind of power grab.
And look at how different this makes everything. In the old state-focused model, the government is accountable to itself, and the goal is just to maintain power. But in the human rights model, the government is accountable to the people, and the goal is to uphold their dignity. It totally flips the script on who disaster response is supposed to serve. The difference is just night and day.
This way of thinking also messes with the geopolitical games that powerful nations sometimes play. When aid is just another chess piece in global politics, it completely fails the human rights test. So this approach calls for something bigger, a concept of global justice, where help is a universal right for everyone, not a political tool for the powerful.
Okay, let's bring this all home in our last section and really look at what this means for the future of how we handle crises.
So how do we get there? The article says we need two main things. First, we need policies that are built with citizens, not just handed down to them. And second, we need strong international watchdogs to hold governments accountable. But, and this is a big but, the article is very clear that the obstacles are enormous. You've got political divisions, not enough resources, and of course the ever-growing threat of climate change, which pretty much guarantees more frequent and more intense disasters.
And this, right here, is probably the most important takeaway of all. What Sampath Samarakun is calling for isn't just a new binder on a shelf, a new management technique. It's a political movement. And the warning here is pretty stark. If we fail to do this, disasters won't just destroy buildings. They'll break our societies apart, making all the existing divisions even worse, and leading to instability long after the floodwaters recede.
In the end, the stakes are just incredibly high. As the article says, this isn't about better logistics or more efficient supply chains. This is a political transformation. It's about fundamentally changing the relationship we have with our governments and with each other.
Ultimately, this article from Vikalpa.org leaves us with this one last, really powerful question. It's a question that forces us to think about what recovery really means. Is it just about putting the bricks back together? Or is it a chance, maybe our only chance, to build something stronger, something fairer, and something more humane than what was there before?